Once upon a time, there was an old man named John who lived alone in a large house in the countryside. John had always been a brave man, but lately, he had been feeling uneasy. He would hear strange noises coming from the attic at night, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. One night, as John was lying in bed trying to fall asleep, he heard a loud thumping sound coming from above. He got up to investigate, but as he climbed the stairs to the attic, the temperature dropped dramatically, and he could feel a sense of dread creeping up on him. As he reached the top of the stairs, he heard a scratching sound coming from one of the storage boxes. He cautiously approached the box and slowly lifted the lid, only to be met with a pair of glowing red eyes staring back at him. Suddenly, a bony hand shot out of the box, and John stumbled backward in terror. The creature emerged from the box, revealing itself to be a ghastly monster with long, sharp claws and skin as black as coal. John tried to run, but the monster was too fast, and it chased him through the attic. As he ran, John realized that the monster was feeding off his fear, growing stronger with every passing moment. Just as the monster was about to catch him, John remembered a piece of advice his grandmother had given him when he was young: fear is just a state of mind. You have the power to overcome it. With all his might, John closed his eyes and took a deep breath, focusing on his inner strength. When he opened his eyes, the monster had disappeared, and the attic was empty. From that day on, John never heard from the monster again. He lived the rest of his life in peace, knowing that he had the power to overcome even the scariest of monsters. Once upon a time, there was a young girl named Emily who loved teddy bears more than anything in the world. Her collection was extensive, but there was one teddy bear that stood out among the rest. It was a beautiful, vintage teddy bear with a sweet face and soft, fluffy fur. Emily had found it at a garage sale and had been drawn to it immediately. Emily didn't know the teddy bear was cursed. It had been owned by a little girl who had died tragically in a house fire many years ago. The girl's spirit had become attached to the teddy bear, and anyone who owned it would be haunted by her ghost. Emily had no idea about the curse, and she treasured the teddy bear above all others. She would talk to it every night before bed and would take it with her everywhere she went. But strange things began to happen around her. Doors would slam shut on their own, and objects would move around the room inexplicably. Emily started to feel like she was being watched, and the feeling only intensified when she was holding the teddy bear. One night, as Emily was getting ready for bed, she heard a voice whispering her name. She looked around the room but saw no one. Then, she felt a cold breath on the back of her neck, and she screamed in terror. Suddenly, the teddy bear came to life and started moving on its own. Its eyes glowed red, and it started floating in the air. Emily was frozen in fear as the teddy bear floated towards her. But then, just as suddenly as it had come to life, the teddy bear fell to the ground and went still. Emily cautiously approached it, and as she picked it up, she realized that it had a small tear in its seam. She opened up the teddy bear and found a note inside. The note was from the little girl who had owned the teddy bear before her. It read, "To whoever finds this teddy bear, I hope it brings you as much happiness as it brought me. But if it ever scares you, just remember that it's just a teddy bear. You are safe, and you are loved." Emily's fear melted away as she realized that the little girl's spirit had been trying to comfort her all along. From that moment on, she cherished the teddy bear even more, knowing that it was not cursed but rather a source of comfort and love. Long ago, in a small village nestled deep in the mountains of Japan, a traveler arrived seeking answers to a strange mystery. It was said that on moonless nights, a woman would appear in the village, haunting the dreams of those who saw her and bringing misfortune to their lives. Undeterred by the rumors, the traveler set out to investigate the mystery. He spoke with the villagers, learning more about the woman and the dark secrets that shrouded the village. As he delved deeper into the mystery, he began to sense a sinister presence lurking in the shadows. He heard whispers in the wind and saw fleeting glimpses of the mysterious woman in the corners of his vision. One moonless night, as the traveler wandered the village, he saw her, the woman who haunted the dreams of the villagers. She was beautiful, with long black hair and piercing eyes that seemed to look into his very soul. But as she approached him, the traveler felt a sense of dread wash over him. He knew that this was not a woman, but a vengeful spirit, seeking revenge for some past injustice. The traveler tried to run, but the spirit pursued him relentlessly, her long hair trailing behind her like serpents. He could feel her icy breath on the back of his neck, and hear her whispers in his ear. As the traveler stumbled and fell to the ground, he realized that he had fallen victim to the curse of the vengeful spirit. He was doomed to wander the village, haunting the dreams of those who dared to tread on the dark path he had chosen. And so it was that the traveler became a legend in the village, a cautionary tale whispered around campfires and passed down through the generations. For those who dared to seek the truth behind the mystery of the moonless nights, they knew that they did so at their own peril, for the vengeful spirit still lurked in the shadows, waiting for her next victim. The vengeful spirit that haunted the moonless nights in the remote Japanese village was a creature of darkness and malevolence, born from a great injustice that had been committed against her in life. In death, she sought revenge upon the living, tormenting those who had wronged her and their descendants for generations to come. Her form was that of a beautiful woman, with long black hair and piercing eyes that glowed with an eerie light. But despite her beauty, she emanated a cold and menacing presence, striking fear into the hearts of those who encountered her. Legend had it that the spirit possessed great powers, capable of manipulating the elements and weaving illusions that could drive a person mad. She could cause crops to wither and die, and summon storms that would ravage the village. Some claimed that she had even been known to possess the bodies of the living, using them as vessels to carry out her dark will. But her greatest power lay in her ability to curse those who saw her, haunting their dreams and bringing misfortune to their lives. Those who crossed her path were doomed to a life of misery and sorrow, unless they could find a way to lift the curse. Some whispered that the spirit was the embodiment of a powerful demon, summoned from the depths of the underworld by a powerful sorcerer. Others claimed that she was the vengeful ghost of a wronged woman, seeking justice in death for the injustices she had suffered in life. Whatever the truth may be, the vengeful spirit remained a terrifying presence in the village, haunting the moonless nights and striking fear into the hearts of those who dared to cross her path. Years had passed since the last traveler had come to the remote Japanese village, seeking answers to the mystery of the vengeful spirit that haunted the moonless nights. But one day, a new traveler arrived, determined to unravel the secrets that had long been hidden away. Unlike the previous traveler, this one was well-versed in the ways of magic and the supernatural. He had studied under the greatest masters of the occult, and possessed knowledge and power that few could match. The traveler spoke with the villagers, learning more about the vengeful spirit and the dark forces that had brought her into being. He studied ancient texts and consulted with the spirits of the dead, seeking a way to defeat the curse and save the village from its malevolent influence. Days turned into weeks, and the traveler spent long hours in meditation and study, honing his skills and preparing for the inevitable confrontation with the vengeful spirit. And then, one moonless night, she appeared before him, the vengeful spirit, with her long black hair and piercing eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light. But the traveler was ready. He drew forth a talisman from his robes, chanting ancient incantations that summoned the power of the elements to his aid. He stood his ground as the spirit approached, her cold and menacing presence washing over him. But the traveler was not afraid. He knew that he possessed the power to defeat her, to break the curse that had plagued the village for so many years. And so he raised his hand, calling forth a bolt of lightning that struck the vengeful spirit with a deafening crash. She wailed in pain, her form flickering and fading as the curse was broken. The traveler watched as the vengeful spirit vanished into the night, her power broken and her influence lifted. He knew that the village would never be haunted again by her malevolent presence, and that the curse had been lifted forever. The villagers gathered around the traveler, thanking him for his bravery and his skill in defeating the vengeful spirit. They knew that they owed him a great debt, and promised to honor him and his memory for generations to come. And so it was that the traveler became a legend in the village, a hero who had saved them from the dark forces that had plagued them for so many years. His name was whispered with reverence and awe, a symbol of hope and courage in a world that was often filled with darkness and despair. Sakura was a bright student at her high school, always at the top of her class. But one day, something strange began to happen. Every time she walked by her locker, she heard strange noises coming from inside. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but as the days went on, the noises grew louder and more distinct. One day, Sakura decided to investigate. She opened her locker and found nothing out of the ordinary, but as she closed it, she felt a chill run down her spine. She turned around and saw a figure standing behind her, its eyes glowing with a sinister light. Sakura tried to run, but the figure grabbed her and whispered in her ear, "This locker is mine. You can never leave." Sakura was horrified, but she refused to let the spirit win. She told her friends about the possessed locker, and they decided to try to exorcise it. They tried everything they could think of: prayers, charms, even a makeshift exorcism, but nothing worked. The spirit seemed to grow stronger every day. As the weeks went on, the spirit began to torment Sakura and her friends. It would move things around in their lockers, make strange noises during class, and even cause accidents in the school hallways. The students were scared and didn't know what to do. One day, Sakura had had enough. She gathered her courage and went to confront the spirit. She opened her locker and stood her ground, ready to face whatever came her way. Suddenly, the locker door slammed shut, and the room was filled with an eerie silence. Sakura's friends rushed to her aid, but when they opened the locker, they found nothing inside. The spirit was gone. Sakura and her friends breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that they had finally exorcised the locker. But as they walked away, they heard a faint whisper in the distance, "I'll be back." The students knew that the vengeful spirit was still out there, waiting to strike again. They left the school that day, never looking back, hoping that they had left the locker's curse behind them forever. But they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, and that the spirit was still with them, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next victim. After leaving the school, Sakura and her friends tried to move on with their lives, but the memory of the possessed locker haunted them. They couldn't shake the feeling that the vengeful spirit was still out there, waiting to strike again. One night, Sakura woke up to find her locker door open. She knew that she had closed it before going to bed, so she got up to investigate. As she approached the locker, she heard a voice whispering her name. It was the same voice that had spoken to her before. Sakura's heart raced as she tried to close the locker, but it wouldn't budge. Suddenly, she was lifted off the ground and thrown across the room. Her friends rushed to her aid, but they couldn't explain what had just happened. Students read on internet about the legend has it that the spirit that possessed the locker was that of a former student who had suffered greatly during their time at the school. The student had been relentlessly bullied and tormented by their classmates, and had eventually taken their own life near the locker. The students knew that they had to do something before the spirit caused more harm. They decided to seek the help of a local exorcist who was rumored to have experience dealing with vengeful spirits. The exorcist arrived at the school and performed a powerful ritual to banish the spirit. It was a long and grueling process, but eventually, the spirit was forced out of the locker and into the afterlife. Sakura and her friends were relieved that the ordeal was finally over, but they couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if they hadn't sought help. They made a promise to always be on the lookout for signs of the supernatural and to never underestimate the power of vengeful spirits.
It was a typical Friday night when a group of 5 friends decided to embark on a thrilling adventure. They had heard rumors about an abandoned asylum on the outskirts of town, which was said to be haunted by the spirits of its former patients. Despite the warnings from the locals, the friends were determined to explore the creepy asylum and uncover the truth about the paranormal activities that allegedly took place there. They parked their car outside the rusted gates and made their way towards the dilapidated building. The air was thick with an eerie silence as they cautiously walked through the overgrown grass and towards the entrance. As they stepped inside, the darkness engulfed them, and they felt a chill run down their spines. The corridors were lined with rusted metal beds, broken furniture, and discarded medical equipment, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. The friends' flashlights barely illuminated the darkness ahead, and they felt like they were walking blindfolded into a labyrinth of horrors. As they made their way deeper into the asylum, they began to experience inexplicable visions and terrifying encounters with ghostly apparitions. One of the friends claimed to see a shadowy figure lurking in the corner of their eye, while another swore they heard the sound of footsteps coming from the empty rooms. The feeling of being watched and followed was palpable, and they couldn't shake off the feeling of being trapped in a nightmare. As they continued their exploration, they stumbled upon a room that was still intact. The walls were adorned with eerie drawings, and the old-fashioned medical equipment gave them a glimpse into the painful history of the asylum. Suddenly, they heard a blood-curdling scream, and they ran towards the source. They found one of their friends lying on the ground, screaming. They tried to calm him down, but he kept repeating that he was being dragged away by a shadowy figure. The friends realized that they had been foolhardy to venture into the asylum, and they decided to make a run for it. As they hurried towards the exit, they heard the sound of a door creaking open behind them, and they knew that they had to move faster. The friends finally made it to their car, panting and sweating profusely. They drove away from the asylum as fast as they could, never looking back. Their friend who was lying on the ground screaming was eventually able to calm down enough to explain what had happened to him. He claimed that while they were exploring the asylum, he saw a shadowy figure lurking in the corner. He initially thought it was one of his friends playing a prank on him, but as he turned to confront the figure, he was suddenly pulled back by an invisible force. The friend described feeling like he was being dragged away by an unseen entity, and he couldn't move or break free. He also claimed to have seen the faces of some of the asylum's former patients in his vision, which left him feeling even more terrified. After the incident, the friend refused to talk about it, and his behavior became increasingly erratic. He started having nightmares and experiencing anxiety attacks, and he eventually sought professional help. The doctors diagnosed him with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, which they attributed to his experience at the asylum. He underwent therapy and received medication to help him manage his symptoms, and eventually, he was able to regain a sense of normalcy in his life. However, he never forgot what had happened to him at the asylum, and the experience continued to haunt him for years to come. When friends got home, they couldn't shake off the feeling that they had left a part of themselves behind in the asylum. They never spoke about their experience again, but the memory of the haunted asylum stayed with them for the rest of their lives.
There once was an old mansion on the outskirts of town. It had been abandoned for years, and many people believed it was haunted. One Halloween night, a group of friends decided to explore the mansion and see if the rumors were true. As they entered the mansion, they heard strange noises coming from the walls. They brushed it off as the wind, but the noises grew louder as they ventured deeper into the mansion. Suddenly, the doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. The friends tried to open the doors, but they wouldn't budge. They were stuck inside with no way out. They huddled together, scared and alone, as the noises grew louder and more menacing. Just when they thought they were going to die, the doors suddenly opened, and a figure emerged from the darkness. It was the old caretaker of the mansion, who had come to check on the property. Relieved and grateful, the friends thanked the caretaker and asked him to explain the strange noises they had heard. The caretaker smiled and revealed a hidden room behind a bookshelf, where he had been storing his collection of vintage music boxes. As he played one of the music boxes, the friends realized that the eerie noises they had heard were simply the sounds of the delicate music boxes echoing through the mansion's walls. They had been scared by something as innocent as a collection of vintage music boxes. The friends couldn't help but laugh at how silly they had been to believe in ghosts, and they left the mansion feeling much braver than when they had entered. They never forgot the spooky night they spent in the mansion, but they were glad that the unexpected ending had brought them all together and shown them that sometimes the scariest things are just a figment of our imagination. Two high school girls, Akari and Yui, had always felt something off about their new homeroom teacher, Ms. Ishikawa. They couldn't quite put their finger on it, but there was something eerie and unsettling about her. They had heard rumors that she was a witch, but had dismissed them as mere gossip. One day, while exploring an abandoned wing of the school, Akari and Yui stumbled upon a hidden room. Inside, they discovered a dusty old book with strange incantations and symbols. As they flipped through the pages, they felt a strange energy radiating from the book. Suddenly, the door slammed shut and they were trapped inside. As they searched for a way out, they heard a cackling laugh and saw Ms. Ishikawa standing in the corner. She revealed herself to be a powerful witch and informed them that they had trespassed into her private sanctuary. Ms. Ishikawa explained that she had been searching for powerful young girls to train in the dark arts and that Akari and Yui showed great potential. She offered to teach them the ways of magic and make them powerful, but warned them that the path to greatness was dangerous and would require sacrifices. Terrified, Akari and Yui knew they had to find a way to escape. They used their wits and the knowledge they had learned from the book to break the spell that had trapped them in the room. As they made their way out, they realized that Ms. Ishikawa had been manipulating them all along and had intended to use their power for her own dark purposes. Now, Akari and Yui must use their newfound knowledge of magic to protect themselves and others from Ms. Ishikawa's wrath. They know that they must tread carefully, as the line between good and evil becomes increasingly blurred in the world of magic. Will they be able to escape the clutches of the witch and her twisted desires, or will they fall prey to her sinister plans? As Akari and Yui delved deeper into the world of magic, they began to realize the extent of Miss Ishikawa's power. They discovered that the rumors of her being a witch were true, and that she had been practicing dark magic for years. The more they learned, the more they were convinced that they needed to stop her. They searched for a way to defeat Miss Ishikawa, and finally stumbled upon an ancient spell that could weaken her powers. But the spell required a sacrifice, and they knew that they would have to give up something important in order to use it. Despite the risks, Akari and Yui decided to go through with the plan. They performed a ritual, and as they did, they felt the energy in the room shift. Ms. Ishikawa appeared before them, weakened and vulnerable. But just as they thought they had won, Ms. Ishikawa revealed her final trick. She had been preparing for this moment for years, and had set up a trap for anyone who dared to challenge her. Suddenly, the walls of the room began to close in, trapping Akari and Yui in a small space. They realized that Ms. Ishikawa had set up a spell that would crush them to death. In their last moments, Akari and Yui held hands and tried to think of a way out. As the walls closed in, they focused all their energy on breaking the spell. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the walls stopped moving. Akari and Yui were shocked, but relieved to be alive. They looked around and saw Ms. Ishikawa lying on the ground, defeated. They had broken her spell, and now she was powerless. But as they left the room, they couldn't help but wonder what other tricks Ms. Ishikawa had up her sleeve. They knew that they would have to be constantly vigilant, and always ready for the next attack.